Oh, hold on 1 second. One more second. One of the most important thing about technology is how it can change people. In today's video, we are going to talk about a concept called digital minimalism. Now, many years ago, back in 2018, I wrote about my desire to unchain from technology. I had been struggling personally to find that balance with being active in an online community, but also pulling back and taking time for myself and to connect with other people in real life. The struggle was real, especially when majority of my days were in front of a computer, writing, interacting, emailing, and connecting with others through digital technology. During that time period, I embarked on a few simple changes to disconnect myself from technology, which I will share a little later in this video in the hopes that it might help you too. Now, the journey of digital minimalism takes time. It takes lots of trial and error, and it can sometimes take some failures. But if you are interested in true digital minimalism, or the fact that you just want to focus your attention and time on something that you value, then it's worth experimenting, testing, and trying out what works for you. Part of my frustration with all the technology that I was personally using was that it felt like it was hindering my decision making, it was making me less creative, and it was making me default to scrolling for hours. And that was a lot of time wasted for me. It was so easy to blame myself for my lack of willpower, for my lack of the ability to just put my phone down. But one of the things I've learned over time, and this has also been confirmed by many studies, is that the technology we use today has been designed to be addictive. A great read into this is a book called Irresistible: The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. It's a great book if you want to learn more of the ways today's apps and devices are being engineered to keep us scrolling and liking for hours on end. The secret is that many of these apps play with the reward system in our simple brains, and it releases dopamine hits without us ever realizing it. Apps and websites sprinkle intermittent variable rewards all over their products because it's good for business. Attention-catching notification badges, or the satisfying way a single finger swipe swoops in the next potentially interesting post are often carefully tailored to elicit strong responses. Thanks for joining me today in this video. My name is Catherine Agapjan, and here at Sisters for Fi, we cover personal finance, minimalism, sustainability, and motherhood. Now, don't get me wrong, I love technology as much as the next person. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree related to technology and lots of professional experience working in IT and ad tech. And maybe that's part of the reason why I can look at all of this technology now with a very critical eye. This video is part of a 3-video series. The next part of this video is all about digital minimalism and parenthood, but more specifically, motherhood, or my experience as a new mother in today's digital landscape. And the last part of this series will be about digital minimalism and personal finance, and how today's new technology is both good and bad for our finances. I do just want to acknowledge that this video is on a free platform whose primary business model and money-making scheme is through ad revenue. And someday, this channel may partake in a similar model. Right now, I don't have a solution for that, but I do want to share that if ads are a problem for you, if they lead you to consume more, to go into debt, to buy things you don't need. If they distract you from what you're looking to do, I would highly recommend perhaps paying a nominal fee to remove ads and ensure that the content you want to see is focused purely on the entertainment or the education side instead of distraction. And let's first break down this concept of the digital attention economy. The term attention economy was coined by a psychologist, economist, and Nobel laureate Herbert A. Simon, who posited that attention was the bottleneck of human thought. It limits what we can do. He noted that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. Two keywords there: information and attention. And he suggested that multitasking was a myth and it doesn't really lead to anything. And lots of studies have proven that in order to actually get deep work done, you are better off at focusing on one thing. Then, in 1997, a theoretical physicist, Michael Goldhaber, introduced the idea that the currency of the new economy won't be money, but attention. This was a very radical new theory of value. He theorized that instead of us living in a material-based economy, we would shift to an attention-based economy. And here we are in 2022, and this is exactly what's happening. Today, thanks in part to advances in digital technology, an overwhelming amount of information is now available at our fingertips. The challenge that we as humans have is that we have a limited amount of attention to give, which makes attention a very valuable and scarce resource for ourselves and for those who want to exploit it as the new currency. There'll be more resources in the description regarding this concept of the attention economy or the digital attention economy if you want to read more about that. Now, today's big companies compete for our time, our eyeballs, our attention, and our money in order to become profitable and successful. You know these companies. And this gets easier to do the more we are connected with digital technology. Companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, TikTok require our attention to survive. The sad part is that the quality of that attention doesn't really matter. What matters is just the attention itself. And you see this when you yourself consume this type of information. You might be watching Netflix but scrolling through TikTok or doing something else on the side. So your attention is already divided across so many media, so much technology, and so forth. All of this technology, all of the apps, all of the devices has led many of us to be in this perpetual state of distraction, where one ping will get us to open something else, another message will distract us for something else. And this definitely messes with our decision making, with our creativity, and so many other things. Because many of the apps that we use have been designed to be addictive, we are also in this very passive consumption state where we just scroll mindlessly through our feeds without necessarily truly understanding some of the value of what we're seeing. This also has created a very unhealthy relationship with our devices where we cannot let it go, where we can't put it down for even a few minutes without wanting to check it or without feeling like a ping or notification will get us back to it. There's also something to say about the culture within social media. There is some sort of toxic psychology that really plays into our insecurities, our fears, and our emotions. And some of this is not good for our mental health. Many of the posts you see on social media make you feel inadequate. They may make you fear things. They may make you hate your neighbor. and so much more. So there is a lot at play when it comes to the technology that we use, to the apps that we use, to the social media that we use that really affects our day-to-day lives. If you have been struggling with focusing, if you have been struggling with making decisions, if you have been struggling with forming great relationships, and if you have been struggling with coming up with creative ideas or finding happiness for yourself, it might be time to venture into this world of digital minimalism. So, what exactly is digital minimalism? Well, it is a term that was popularized by author and computer scientist Cal Newport. In his book of the same name, he defines digital minimalism as a philosophy of technology use in which you focus your online time on a number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support things you value. And then you miss out happily on everything else. The book doesn't provide quick tips and tricks on how to get off Instagram or Facebook or Reddit, but it offers strategies to get you to focus your time on more value-added internet browsing and participation. It asks you to experiment and try these out for 30 days. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that it takes effort to try to minimize your digital use. A big part because you have to figure out what you will do with your time when you get off the technology. So now that we understand this concept of digital minimalism, the next step we will need to do is to do a digital declutter. And a digital declutter is all about auditing your entire digital life. And when you do this, you need to remove or reorganize everything into things that you find valuable so that it's streamlined, simple, and more secure and sustainable for you to use. To start your digital declutter, start with an audit of all of the devices that you use in your home. Do you really need all of them? Can you consolidate some of them? Can you sell them? Can you donate it? Can you bring it back to the manufacturer for recycling? While digital clutter doesn't necessarily take up physical space, it does take up mental space. And because there's something else competing for your attention, it can really lead to stress and it can tax you mentally. The next step in the digital declutter process is to do an audit of all of the things you do online. What are these? Are all of these necessary? Set aside a 30-day period where you will take a break from some of these optional technologies, apps in your life. The big thing you will need to make sure when you do this 30-day period cleanse or declutter or whatever you call it is that you need to substitute and find activities that you find satisfying and meaningful. And sometimes this requires trial and error, and you may not find that activity in a 30-day period, but you need to look and try. Once that 30-day period ends, you will reintroduce some of this optional technology back into your life. Some of these technologies you might not even want to bring back, or some you may need to find the middle ground and create rules for yourself and how you will use it. Remember, if you are doing this 30-day challenge and you do feel like you're failing or that the urge to go on social media is so strong, keep in mind that you are competing against companies whose primary reason is to get your attention. Sometimes these companies will win. So you need to forgive yourself a little bit if you do feel like you're failing during this detox period or this declutter period. But try again and keep experimenting. As you go through this digital declutter period, I'll share some of the things that worked for me, some initially and some over time. One is to keep things simple. While it's very tempting to have all of the latest gadgets, it's good to be mindful of the kinds of technology you bring into your home. How will this new device, new gadget change the way I use my time? How will this item affect how my family uses their time? It's tempting to get a second TV or an iPad and reduce that argument between who watches what. But how will this affect how your family spends time together? Will there now be two separate groups watching two separate shows? And is that what you want to see? Consider buying these devices, gadgets, and appliances that doesn't have a lot of extras. The extras normally mean that planned obsolescence has been built in, so it makes it more difficult to troubleshoot, makes it more difficult to truly use it for the function that you want it for. I also encourage you to just look at the analog versions of some of the things you have in your home. Maybe you don't need to upgrade to the digital version. An example might be clocks. It's something very simple, but in our home, we still have clocks on a wall with a battery, and it's very easy for us to tell time. And it also reduces this need to pick up your phone to look at the time, and it leads to distractions and so forth. At our home, we also do not have Google or Alexa, and while we have some smart bulbs, I mostly still turn on our lights by a switch. So it's something to keep in mind that maybe something simple, something less connected might be an answer as you work through your digital declutter process. The next thing you can do is to try to find a home for your phone. One of the best outcomes for me when I started my digital minimalism journey was that I no longer and have not brought my phone into our bedroom. This means I am not checking it late into the night, and this means I am not checking it first thing in the morning. My phone has a home either on my desk, in a separate room, or on the kitchen counter. To be honest, I used to sleep with my phone under my pillow. And sometimes I would check work emails in the middle of the night. And that would lead to anxiety. It would lead to me not sleeping because my brain was busy thinking about replying to an email. So that was one step for me, was to not do that, but also move my phone somewhere where I would not have access to it late at night or even early in the morning. The next tip I would recommend is to not read the news first thing in the morning. Now, I signed up for a lot of these news digests services where they deliver you consolidated news and information first thing in the morning. But upon self-reflection, I found that actually when I was reading some of this early in the morning, it was priming me to fear. It was priming me to have discomfort. It was priming me for these things that I actually didn't need to. And a lot of this stuff too is it hijacks your creativity in the morning. It hijacks your focus in the morning. It clouds a little bit of your judgment. It clouds a little bit of your focus. So I would absolutely reconsider reading the news first thing in the morning. I would reserve your early morning mental energy for things that you really want to work on. There's also this concept called outrage porn, where sometimes you take on that outrage the news feeds back to you. So you're doing that with either your colleagues when you talk about news, with other people. So it's something to just be mindful of when you expose yourself to news first thing in the morning, especially if it's news that's been designed to elicit a certain kind of behavior from you. Another tip that's worked for me too is to opt for the paper version. I love to read, and for a time, I love to read on my phone or the Kindle or even the iPad. But of course, this led to a lot of distractions, despite putting on Do Not Disturb and so forth. I always felt like I could just check something real quick. So instead, consider opting for paper. Go to your library, get those books, subscribe to a magazine, subscribe to a newspaper, where you can actually sit down and read the full content without a lot of distraction. There's also something to say about some long form content where you are actually reading something as opposed to just getting that bit and byte of a sensational news topic. So consider kind of going analog too in this version of finding a paper version for some of the things that you want to consume. The next tip is to challenge yourself to not rely on your phone so much. Consider leaving it at home every once in a while. Take on the mentality of no phone, no problem. This means that if you do leave your phone at home, you might have to ask strangers for the time, you might have to ask strangers for directions, and you might just have to wait until you get home to check on something. There's a high likelihood that if you leave your phone at home, everything will actually be okay. And it might be a little bit freeing for you to start this exercise, to just spend that time putting your phone down and not relying on it so much. A worthwhile exercise too is to unsubscribe from emails. This is both marketing emails from brands that you follow, advertisers, influencers, and other areas where you're getting email. This helps you many ways. One, it cuts the digital clutter that's in your inbox. It reduces temptation, especially when it comes to marketing emails that advertise sales. And it reduces the amount of emails that you have to process. It also reduces the amount of emails that is sitting on global servers somewhere around the world that requires power to process and store. So it's a win-win not only for your attention, but for your wallet as well as the planet. Another move you can do is to actually delete your accounts. This definitely prevents you from coming back to the platform. Instead of just logging off, consider deleting your account because it creates that barrier. Because if you do really want to come back to the platform, you'd have to go through the process and the time of creating a new account. And if that's something that is easy to do, or if it's something that you want to reduce access to, then perhaps deleting those accounts in certain platforms might be the move for you. The next thing that I would also recommend is to not have your apps automatically update. And what this will signal you is that there will be some apps that you don't use for a longer period of time. And when you do see that that's the case, delete it. Instead of, again, that taking up space not only on your phone, but also just the mental space of having to search through some of these things. So consider just using that action from your phone to not automatically update apps and delete them if they are unused. So in your 30-day experiment, you will probably be deleting social media apps. And that is probably the biggest thing that you might have a hard time doing. When you do come back from your digital declutter, reconsider using some of these apps. You might find that you actually don't need some of them. And you might find that you do want to stay on them, but you want to minimize the call to use it. So a few things you can do is use the browser versions if you have to. Don't use the app because there's some friction in there that kind of reduces the time you spend on it. I'd also recommend just cleaning up your feeds. Unfollow people you no longer care about, brands you no longer care about, influencers. Leave groups that no longer add value to you. Unlike pages that you no longer care about. And a lot of this just helps you clean up your feed so that it's focused on the things that you want and the things that you want to see. And finally, too, experiment and experience your life without technology. What does that look like? What are you doing if you aren't on Netflix? What are you doing if you aren't on TikTok? Are you now painting? Are you reading more? Are you playing tennis? What does that life look like? It's also good to step away from just your feeds and liking stuff and actually engaging with people, reaching out to a close friend that you haven't seen in a while, catching up in that kind of scenario. What does life look like with the limited amount of technology? Is it better? Is it worse? What do you add? What do you need to focus on? Again, this is all about experimenting, and this is all about experiencing too, because a lot of this is new to us despite technology being everywhere. So we do need to find our own middle ground. We need to find a way that it works for us. I found that I really love my alone time. I love time where I can just think, where I can talk to myself, where I'm not going to be distracted by other things. And I think it's important for us to really embrace this concept of solitude, of spending time for ourselves. Another helpful lesson for me too was that you don't have to be productive when you do get off social media. Yes, you want to do things that you enjoy, and yes, you want to spend leisure activity, but it doesn't mean that you have to build the great businesses. It doesn't have to mean that you are going to change the world. It could just be the fact that you are spending time doing things that you love. It's not earning you money, but it's making you happy and significantly changing the way you view the world. I hope this video has been helpful. If you have tips for other people as they go through their own digital minimalism journey, please leave them in the comments so that we can all learn and share from each other. This video is part of a 3-video series where we talk about digital minimalism in parenthood as well as digital minimalism as it relates to personal finance. I will see you next week for the next video. Bye!